Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about fragrance names. Have you ever wondered why particular fragrances have particular names? Really, a fragrance name can make or break a fragrance. It can make people intrigued and want to go and try a fragrance. It can sell a fragrance. It can really put you on the journey towards buying it. So fragrance names are incredibly important and they really help with the marketing. They can tell you what a fragrance smells like. They can give you an impression of a mood of a fragrance. And there are 3 fragrances in particular that I've chosen for this video, and I'm just going to tell you what I found out about why that fragrance is named. And in one case, it's not at all what I thought. So if that kind of thing interests you, then please do consider subscribing, and also please like this video if you do like this video. And let's get on with this video. So the first fragrance I'm going to talk about is actually probably one of the most famous fragrances out there. And I think actually if you haven't heard of this fragrance, you must have been living in a cave the last 7 years, because this fragrance has been everywhere. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about Baccarat Rouge 540. So Baccarat Rouge 540 was never intended to be anything more than a limited edition fragrance. It was a collaboration between Maison Kurkdjian and Baccarat Crystal House. It was first released in 2016 as a limited edition of only 250 bottles to celebrate the 250th anniversary of Baccarat Crystal. The idea of the fragrance was to embody the Baccarat crystal. But why is it called Rouge 540? So the name Rouge 540 has been inspired by a particular way in which Baccarat make a particular type of crystal. So very famously, the Baccarat Crystal House have a very particular type of crystal that they always put in chandeliers. So it's actually called Rouge à l'or, which means golden red. And the reason for that is because 24 karat gold is added to the crystals as they're being formed in the oven, and they are fired to a temperature of 540 degrees Celsius. So that's where the name Baccarat Rouge 540 comes from. The scent itself is meant to represent the crystal. So Kurkdjian worked with ambroxan and also woody fragrance notes in order to produce something that is reminiscent of warmed sand, which is the base material of crystal. He then added ethyl maltol, which is supposed to represent the fire of the fragrance. He then also added hedione to represent the wind of the furnace, basically. And then he also added red notes to give that red colouring. So he added orange and saffron to convey that red feeling. Kurkdjian actually rated this scent so much that he decided that it was too good to just restrict to a limited edition. And he made what he thought would be enough fragrance for 6 months to stock his Maison Kurkdjian line. What in actual fact happened was that it sold out within 1 month, and he knew he was onto a hit. Baccarat Rouge has inspired countless impressions and dupes. You can not really go down a high street anymore without smelling something that resembles Baccarat Rouge, even if it isn't Baccarat Rouge. It spurned an entire category of fragrance. Without fragrances like Angel and its use of ethyl maltol, then fragrances like Baccarat Rouge 540 would not have existed. But Baccarat Rouge 540 was revolutionary because it used that spun sugar note of the ethyl maltol in combination with an overdose of ambroxan. And there's also that piney resinous feel to the fragrance that is just so distinctive and really has spawned an entire genre of fragrance. Baccarat Rouge 540 blew up in part because Rihanna was reported to be wearing it. And then things like TikTok and YouTube happened, and people just started blind buying this fragrance, a fragrance they'd never smelt that cost over £200. People were willingly blind buying because they had the belief that it was that good. And you know, that is an absolutely amazing phenomenon, isn't it? So yeah, I had no clue why the boxes of Baccarat Rouge 540 featured chandeliers, but now I know. It's because that's what that fragrance represents. It represents the golden red crystal glass that is used in the chandeliers of Baccarat. So the next fragrance I'm going to talk about is actually one from Tom Ford, and it's actually called, I can't even say this on YouTube, it's called Effing Fabulous. And this fragrance was actually, again, not intended to be a major release. It was intended to just be sold in Tom Ford boutiques, not to be sold in department stores. But actually it was a roaring success. And why? It was partially because of the name. And how did that name come about? Well, why do you think a fragrance would be called Effing Fabulous? Well, It's because the creative director of the fashion house was most impressed by it. So this is apparently what Tom Ford said in a meeting about this fragrance when he first smelt it. He said, "That's effing fabulous." And he wanted it to be named that. The fragrance sold out very, very quickly in his boutique. So the fragrance itself is a spicy, leathery fragrance with hints of lavender, vanilla, bitter almond, and also amber. And actually, Tom Ford decided that he wanted it sold in department stores after the success and demand there'd been in his shops. But Estee Lauder, the parent company of Tom Ford Fragrances, had other ideas. They did not want a fragrance called that to be mass marketed. They thought it was too daring. Tom Ford stuck to his guns because, ultimately it had sold out, and that name just intrigues people, doesn't it? It's something that makes you want to go and try it. What is so good about this fragrance that makes people say that about it? In 2018, Effing Fabulous won the Fragrance Foundation's Fragrance of the Year award. But even when that Fragrance Association was posting about Tom Ford's win, they actually called that fragrance fabulous because they did not want to have that word on their website. It still has that shock factor, doesn't it? And that is what is intriguing about that fragrance. That is what is making people want to try it. What is making people want to buy it? What do you buy the person who has everything in life? You buy them a fragrance called Effing Fabulous. Tom Ford is not someone who shies away from controversy in his fragrance names. He is a person who likes to name his fragrances in a certain way. So we've also now had Lost Cherry, Rose Prick, and we've also had Bitter Peach. So if you actually look at what Bitter Peach is referring to, of course we've all seen the peach emoji. You've probably got a good idea of what peaches are on about, but actually Bitter Peach has a very particular meaning. And bitter peach is something that can refer to an angry or scornful woman, but also in the gay community, which Tom Ford is actually part of, it can also mean an angry or scornful gay man. And there are also many other Urban Dictionary kind of slang connotations of bitter peach, which I'll leave you to Google at your leisure, but I'm probably not going to put them in this video. So yeah, Tom Ford is actually a gold mine of fragrance names. And finally, the last fragrance I'm going to talk about is L'interdit by Givenchy. So there have been several iterations of L'interdit from Givenchy, and actually Hubert de Givenchy was a fashion designer in the 1950s, and his muse was Audrey Hepburn. So if you've seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, you will have noticed those gorgeous costumes that she wears, including that beautiful black dress with that diamond collar, and that dress was designed by Givenchy. And actually many of her other outfits in many of her other films were also designed by Givenchy. She was someone who was used by Givenchy to promote his fashion house. You know what? I read Breakfast at Tiffany's when I was still at school, and the book is so incredibly different to the film. I remember when I saw the film in my 20s, I was shocked at how different it is, because really, it's quite daring of someone like Hepburn to take on that role, because she is a glorified cool girl basically in that film, isn't she? She accepts money for the powder room from men. She is not someone who a respectable actress would probably want to play at that time, but that film glamorizes that situation. The film even has a different ending to the book. That's how different they are. And actually, if you watch the film, the star of it for me is the cat. The cat is such a good actor. Every time I watch the film, I'm just like, how did you get the cat to do that? I mean, I love cats, but if you've watched Breakfast at Tiffany's, you'll know just how good an actor that cat is. Anyway, back to Givenchy. So at the time when Givenchy created L'interdit, it wasn't conventional at all to have a face for your fragrance, but he wanted Audrey Hepburn to be the face of his fragrance and to advertise it. So around 1954, as Hubert de Givenchy was making the dresses for Audrey Hepburn in Sabrina, the film, he decided that he wanted to launch a fragrance based around Audrey Hepburn, and he created L'interdit. So this fragrance was meant to be a sort of very delicate imagining of Audrey Hepburn. It was a spring-like, very fresh kind of fragrance with a lot of aldehydes in it, and actually Audrey seemed to really like it and supported the venture. So by 1957, the fragrance was ready and Givenchy decided that he wanted to release it to the world, having given it to Audrey Hepburn to begin with. And actually, there are two versions of this story. So the first version says that Audrey Hepburn forbade it, and that's why it's called L'interdit, forbidden, because the fragrance had been gifted to her. It was her fragrance. Why should the world share it? But in the second version, it's more generous towards Audrey Hepburn, and it says that actually she wanted to share it with the world, and she told Givenchy to release it to the world. But then that doesn't really explain why the fragrance was called L'interdit. Of course, you know, in many ways, fragrance names are just that, aren't they? They're just names. There doesn't have to be a meaning behind them. And L'interdit is a very intriguing name, and it's something that would perhaps get people in the 50s to go out and try a fragrance. At a time when rock stars on TV, you know, gyrating their hips was a little bit risque, then a fragrance called L'interdit is going to attract some attention. So perhaps Hubert de Givenchy just had his own reasons for naming the fragrance that name. And maybe Audrey Hepburn, who was quite a charitable and generous person, seems somewhat unlikely to have said that she forbids this fragrance to be released. I just can't personally imagine Audrey Hepburn saying that, but I may be wrong. So yeah, there are two different versions to the L'interdit story, and you can make up your own mind as to which one is the version that you believe. So L'interdit has been reformulated many times and re-released. So it was re-released back in 1993 as L'interdit 2. It was then released again as L'interdit in 2003, in 2007, and finally, more recently, in 2018. The modern formulation is a representation of the clash between black and white. So it has white florals in it, it has tuberose, it has jasmine, and it has orange blossom, but it also has those darker notes. And it's said to have a black background of smoky vetiver, earthy patchouli, and also a bed of ambroxan. The newest release of L'interdit was actually Hubert de Givenchy's last project, and that's why the boxes bear his signature, because it was his last thing that he did before his death. If you look at the new campaign for the fragrance, Rooney Mara is the person who represents the fragrance, and she is actually looking slightly like Audrey Hepburn in the advertisements, and the advertisements are also filmed on the metro in Paris, so again that echoes some of Audrey's films. So that's the final fragrance story in this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, then please press the thumbs up, and also please consider subscribing if you haven't done already, and please let me know if you know of any fragrance name stories, and what do you think about the L'interdit story? Do you think that Audrey Hepburn would have been so mean as to say that she forbade the release of a fragrance? Or do you think that she's been hard done by in the historical record? Please let me know down below, and also thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!